Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a ridiculous trespassing Karen pulled a gun on me after I tried to kick her out of my private property. Here is what happened in this story. Let's dive right into the video. So I live in a pretty rural area where most people have a decent chunk of land to their name. The big difference between mine and everybody else's is that I have a lake on my property. It's not only on my property, but it's considered part of it, so I own the lake. It is a decent size too, with the ability to take a boat out and fish sometimes. I have signs to show where my property starts and about 3 by the lake saying that it is private property. That stops most people when they realize it's not public and instead part of my land. Then we have this guy that I will call Dan. Cannot use his actual name, and Dan just kind of popped into my head for him. So anyway, Dan trespasses on my land all the time, and I never know exactly how I was meant to deal with him. I knew that he did not live far because he always came on an ATV, so he must live in the same general area that I do. At first I assumed that he just did not see the signs and went up to explain that this was my land and I needed him to get off of it. That worked for a while, but Dan seemed to have a fascination with my lake. He came back time and time again with me needing to chase him away and explain that the lake was part of my property. He was not dumb or did not understand me, he just did not care. I added signs to even specifically say trespassing, but he didn't think that applied to the lake. I did not do anything drastic because it started out so minor. I would see him only once in a blue moon, then more and then more. I did not even realize how bad it got because of how slowly he started coming more often. I don't know if that was part of his plan or just a coincidence. Anyway, I saw his ATV parked outside near my lake one day for the 3rd time that month. You would think, trying to be sneaky, he would hide the ATV or try to camouflage it or something. But nope, just a bright yellow ATV parked in the open because he did not care. This time I decided that I had enough and I went up to him as he was hanging out near the edge of the lake. I'm tired of trying to explain this to you, Dan. Do you not see all the signs saying that this is private property? Dan, I'm not on your property, I'm on the lake, and you need to stop thinking that you own the entire thing just because you own the land next to it. Not next to it. Around it and including it. The lake is my property and I don't want anybody here. Dan, the land by the lake should be public for everybody to enjoy. I bet you're just lying because you want the entire thing to yourself. Being greedy and thinking you can keep everybody else out. What I don't want are people getting hurt on my property and me being liable for it. I can even show you the paperwork that proves the lake is mine if it will make you stop showing up here. Dan, fine, go ahead and show me. I assumed that this was gonna be some magical moment when I showed him the papers and he understood why he cannot be there. I wanted to solve the entire thing peacefully, so I showed him the papers and then he still refused to leave, claiming that it didn't matter because he wanted to be on the lake. I told him the next time I saw him, I was gonna just call the police on him for trespassing. Well, the next weekend he was at it again and I called an emergency line to tell them that I had somebody trespassing on my private property. It turns out he really had some nerve because I saw that he brought a pole and was just fishing away. I did not say anything or show myself to him, I just waited for the police to handle it. When they arrived, I explained that I had given him several warnings and put signs up, and still he refused to ever leave and kept coming back. They said they would speak to him and asked if they got him to leave my property for good this time if I would not press charges. I agreed to that because I did not want him arrested for now, I just wanted him gone. If he stayed away after this, it would be fine with me. The police went up to Dan and started talking to him about the trespassing, that he was not getting arrested but getting a citation for criminal trespassing. When he heard this, Dan got angry and started arguing with the police that he had every right in the world to fish and he was not going to jail. Not understanding that they were not arresting him at that point. Now, we live in the South and guns are not a shock here. Somebody pulling out their gun right in front of the police though is another story. Things went from 0 to 100 really fast once he pulled out that gun and started to wave it around. He said that he was gonna shoot and kill every single one of us while walking around and waving the gun. What nobody noticed was that his movements were just trying to get closer to me. When he was close enough, he threw the gun to get all the police attention and then tackled me to the ground and started punching me. It was the most surreal thing I've ever been a part of. Anyway, the police pulled him off of me pretty fast, but I was still bleeding and had to get checked out by a doctor. It turns out that he had broken my nose, which was just gonna be worse for him because he was already facing a ton of charges. Instead of just a simple citation for trespassing, it turns out that Dan was not meant to have a gun since he had past felony charges involving a firearm. The final guilty charge against him was for aggravated assault, and he was given 2 years in prison because of his past issues. I also got a restraining order, so if he got out and came on my property again, it would be a lot more serious. The only thing I wonder is how much of what Dan did was planned and how much was just what happened. I have no idea if he always had a gun on him or brought it because he knew that I was gonna call the cops that time and wanted to make a big thing of it. I've had people ask me before why, if he had a gun, did he not just shoot me with it? So some of you might wonder that too. So I think he knew that shooting somebody was gonna land him in prison for life, not just a few years, and like I said before, Dan was not stupid or anything, he just did not seem to care about listening and obeying rules. I hope that fishing trip was worth it, because while I don't know much about prison, I know there's no fishing and no riding around on ATVs. And from what I knew about Dan, that was the only thing he cared about. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. But before we proceed, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. Thank you so much. So to get started, I am 36 male and my wife is 33 female. We are expecting our first child soon. My mother, who is 70, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and has been hospitalized since it is so bad doctors say she will not survive since treatments are not working well on her. My dad died when I was young and my mom took care of me while working 2 jobs so that I could have a good life. I feel I owe everything to my mother. I bought her a house and whatever she needed so that she could live her older years well, since we had to struggle so much before. When I got home from work and visiting my mom, my wife and I were talking and she asked if you got a call that I was in labor or your mom was gonna die. Who would you pick? I told her I would pick my mom. She asked why, and I told her that I wanted to be there to say goodbye to my mom since I would never see her again. And so she would have somebody there in her final moments. She got mad at me and said what about her and our baby, and I told her I would try to be there as fast as I could after my mom, but that most likely would not happen, so I told her not to worry about it. She was still mad at me and told me to get out of the house. I left and now I am at my mom's house. So Reddit, am I the a-hole here? Edit, to everyone saying that I would be leaving her alone, no, I wouldn't. She would have her mom there and she has said she wanted her mom there with her. And yes, I was right for leaving my house. It was either I leave or she go, and I was not about to put my pregnant wife out of our house. And yes, I've been there for her. I've taken off work to comfort and help her in any way she needs during this pregnancy. Edit number 2, I keep getting the same question about why did I leave my house even though I may own the house. It was late and I didn't want my pregnant wife out late at night, but she told me to leave, so I knew it was either me or her. 2. My mother is in the hospital, she's not at her house. 3. I thought a lot about what a lot of you said about how I should put her first, but she doesn't put me first at all, she chooses her sisters over me all the time. 4th, I don't make her feel second, I've put my wife first, especially in emergencies, and I've tried my best to comfort her. I've gone home and I now am thinking that I don't need to apologize, do you all, I really don't know. Thanks to everyone who has commented. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this story in the comments. Is OP the a-hole here or not? Comment number 1 said, you got kicked out of your house for getting a hypothetical question wrong. On face value, you are not the a-hole, but what is likely happening is your wife is not feeling the support and love she really wants and needs right now. Is she a super needy, controlling woman or simply feeling a tad neglected? Hormonal? I think you need to consider why she asked the question and address that. That's the problem. The hypothetical question and hurt reaction is simply how it plays out. Get out of your mom's house and go fix this. Leaving her home alone is not gonna help, sleep out front if you need to. By the way, bring lots of apologies too, you are not kicked out for a bad answer here, there's a feeling of loss and so something missing that your wife is not feeling and needs to as soon as possible. Figure that out and go give it to her. And give her another version of it every day for the rest of your life. Go find out what part of love your wife does not think that she has. Don't become an a-hole and sleep at mom's house. Comment number 2, it's a hard choice, but I would say not the a-hole, as long as your wife does actually have another plan for getting to the hospital and someone to support her. If not, the situation is a little iffy. Chances of both happening at the same time are quite unlikely though, so here's hoping that you don't actually have to choose. Update. Hello again, people of Reddit. Some of you asked for an update, so here it is. I went back home yesterday afternoon, she was not there and I assumed she was at her mom's house. She came back in the evening and we had a talk about what happened. She did apologize for asking the question and that when she thought about it she understood my answer, because she would do the same. I asked her why she asked, she said she didn't know and thought that I was gonna pick her since normally I do that. I kind of just said okay and moved on. I did tell her that I want marriage counseling after or even before the babies are born. She asked why and I told her how I felt and she denied it, so I had to give her proof and then she started crying and got mad and told me to sleep in the guest room instead of kicking me out again. So I guess I got a win there. Anyways, she also told me that she no longer wanted me in the delivery room, which I was fine with. I understand to an extent where it's coming from. I will go into therapy, which was suggested, and I think I do need it. Anyway, that's it, thanks for the advice, y'all. Some good and some bad advice, sorry if my comments came off as mean. I'm not really a friendly person until you know me, especially if you're accusing me of something. Update number 2. Hello, this will probably be my last and final update. So I read a lot of your comments and I did apologize not for bringing up marriage counseling, but for the timing that I brought it up and that I did show her proof. She did forgive me and told me that I was still not going to be at the birth of our child. I said to her that it was okay and that I had accepted it and I was not gonna fight her on her choice. I did tell her that I think she and I both need some space before the baby comes, to which she agreed. I told her I would leave and that she could have the house and that if she needed anything to call or text me. And no, I'm not at my mom's house. I am actually at a friend's house. He does not live there anymore, but he usually rents it out. To all of you asking why don't you kick her out, well, it's because I'm the only person who makes money in the house and I know, especially now, if I kick her out it will be called financial, emotionally manipulation or even abuse. So it's better a lot of times if I leave. And yes, I do plan to go back home when the baby is born. And to someone who asked, I do plan to take paternity leave. And no, she does not know where I am at here. She did not ask, so I did not tell, mainly because her family would be banging on my door. To people who I know are gonna ask why aren't you fighting harder to be in the delivery room, well, I've learned that some things I cannot control and one thing is people, if she doesn't want me in there, I won't be. My main example is if I've gotten someone pregnant in my 20s and I said get an abortion just because it's my baby as well, it does not mean that I can control what she does. It's her body, her choice. Lastly, to people who are saying they need more details, I'm not used to just randomly talking about myself. It's been that way since I was a kid. I've gotten better since I was a kid, but it's still a struggle. So if you have a question, give me a specific question because I answer what you ask, not the above. And also about the divorce thing, I do care if she divorces me. I do love her, but I cannot control how she feels so personally. I won't beg her not to. By the way, I will suggest that we get help, but if she doesn't want to, then that's fine. I'm secure. What I mean by that is that she will get nothing in the divorce. Does she know that? I don't know. And now, ripe stars, we have a final update and it reads like this. Hey people, I've got good and bad news. So I will start with the good. My wife had the baby on January 26th and it's a girl and I love her so much. I wanted to name her after my mother, but we found a compromise and her middle name is my mother's name. And of course to the questions I'm gonna get about was I in the delivery room? I was not. I did ask, but I got a no, and she said she had already told her sister and that she couldn't hurt my feelings, which, okay, by then I had stopped caring a lot. The bad news is my mother died. She died a week before my baby was born. A decent bit of her friends came to the funeral, and if you go back up a sentence, I said I had stopped caring a lot. She didn't come to the funeral, she made stupid excuses, and I just said forget it. It was actually nice, though I am mad that she was not there when I needed her. So I have not been talking to her much, so I won't yell at her. We talk about the baby and her, and other than that, we don't talk. I will bring up marriage counseling in a few weeks, but for now, I'm gonna enjoy my baby and love her. The next one is titled, I don't work here, but I got fired. I used to work at a West Coast division store of Kroger. My family has several pets and farm animals. So I routinely shop at a local farm store, and most of the time I did this after my shift ended, which means I am in my work uniform, which means black slacks, either a dark red polo shirt or a button-up gray shirt that have the store logos embroidered on them. The farm store personnel wear jeans, t-shirts and gold-colored vests with the farm store logo. I was in the farm store looking at some electric fence supplies. This woman kept pestering me and asking questions about some jeans she wanted to try on from the other side of the store. I politely pointed in the general direction of the clothing section and she stomped off. A couple minutes later, the same woman is demanding that I unlock the changing room for her. I am rather irritated with her over-aggressive Karen attitude and I snapped, "No, now go away and leave me alone." Again she stomps off. I picked up a few items and started towards the checkout when I get ambushed by this same woman who now has the store manager in tow. She is demanding that I apologize to her. The manager just shakes his head and then asks, "Would you like to apologize to this customer?" I said, "What for?" She is rude, obnoxious and irritating as hell. No, I don't want to apologize. She then screams, "I've never been so humiliated in my life. You need to fire him now." The manager is still shaking his head in disbelief when he says, "Well, ma'am, I'm not able to do that." "And just why the hell not?" she demanded. The store manager is just standing there staring at her. I reply, "Obviously, she's not smart enough to figure out that I don't work here. So to save us both some time and fire me, then maybe she will shut up and go away." So the manager said, "You're fired." The manager barked, drawing even more attention from the other customers in the store. I lean in closer to the woman and say, "Are you happy now, ma'am?" That's the third time she has fired me this week. Have a nice day. Thanks for shopping at Smith Food and Drugs. And I walked away as everyone listening starts laughing. The managers holler at me as I'm walking towards the registers. "See you tomorrow?" "Yeah, I have to get hay and alfalfa." The woman threw down the jeans she was holding and ran out the doors. And the next one is titled, "Karen Thinks I Am Her Servant." I stopped by Costco for a quick hot dog and a drink, finished eating, threw my trash away and started to leave. As I'm walking past the other tables, I hear, "Excuse me." I didn't think anything of it since I don't work here. I was by myself and I didn't see anyone that I knew. Again I hear, "Excuse me," only a bit louder and obviously annoyed. I turn around and not seeing anyone that I know or who exactly had been speaking, I turn to leave when Karen yells, "I'm talking to you. I need you to wipe this table off." I look around dumbfounded because surely she was not talking to me and it wasn't the table I'd been sitting at. Not wanting to be rude, I asked her what she wanted again and Karen told me almost screaming to, "Wipe this table down now." Well, now everyone at the tables and checkout lines are staring. I told her in my most pleasant and sarcastic voice, "Wipe your own damn table. I don't work here." She just stood there with a stupid look on her face as people shook their heads and laughed. I seriously think that some of these people need some medical attention. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would love to know, have you ever been mistaken for an employee at a restaurant or grocery store or whatever in public? Please let me know in the comments. Funnily enough, I have never been mistaken for an employee, however, my girlfriend had been. When we were in Vietnam, and obviously my girlfriend is Thai, she is not Vietnamese and cannot speak Vietnamese, she got mistaken by an entire Korean tourist group for an employee at a shop. And usually my girlfriend is pretty friendly, although she's not always as confident as she should be in her English, so she was actually helping the tourists at first and they were very happy about it. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Last night I am finishing up my shift as an EMT and it's been a long and tiring one. The calls were not bad, but there were a lot of them and we were all over the damn county. So my shift is over, I change back into my comfy clothes, sweats, t-shirt, hoodie, and I head to the store to get something for dinner. I get there just in time since they are closing in 10 minutes. I assure the cashier that I was just grabbing something quick and I go and pick up a lasagna from the frozen section. I grab them and turn to head to the checkout when I hear, "Ahem." Not a throat clearing sound, but someone saying it like they were reading it out loud. I turn and look to see a woman and she snaps off "I need you to go in the back and get me a pack of the frozen pretzels." I say that I don't work here and point out where an employee just went behind an end cap. The woman snaps, "You do work here and you need to stop being lazy and get me my pretzels." I again say, "I don't work here," and turn to walk to the self-checkout. She flips her crap and storms off muttering about lazy employees and managers. I finish checking out and I'm grabbing my stuff and leaving when I see her again with her card and a manager and she yells, "There she is! That's the lazy employee," and starts towards me. I'm not even gonna engage, so I hold up my receipt and my one item to the self-check girl and walk out. I hear the manager raising his voice and saying, "Ma'am? Ma'am? Ma'am?" It turns out she left her card behind and stormed out the store to confront me. I get in my car to drive off, but she is standing in front of it, so I cannot go anywhere. She's also giving me a tongue lashing that I'm too checked out to really pay attention to. Great, I'm already on my last nerve and this woman is hate effing it. The manager sticks his head out of the door and hollers, "Ma'am," and she turns and makes a hushing motion towards him. He hollers, "Ma'am," one more time and she hollers back saying, "I'm dealing with your employee since you're too much of a little witch to do it yourself." He bristles and says, "Madam." She cuts him off with the "Shut the hell up," screeched at the top of her lungs. He shrugs and I watch him go back inside, fiddle with the locks, flip the sign to closed and pull down the shades. As I'm watching this, she gets annoyed that I'm not paying her my full attention and she yells, "What the hell are you looking at? That's so damn important to ignore me." I just pointed at the shop and say, "Well, they just closed and locked the doors." I'm not sure what she screams and it was pretty incoherent, but she did run towards the door. Seeing my chance, I drove off, leaving her pounding on the door and cursing. The next one is the title story and it is titled "Psycho Idiot Attacks Me at Steakhouse with a Knife for Not Serving Her." I'm 27 years old and I started dating a guy from one of my vet classes nearly 2 years ago. We had multiple classes together and I instantly developed a crush on him, but convinced myself that he did not feel the same way. We worked together on a couple of projects and assisted in some surgeries together for one of our classes, and on the last day of the semester he came up to me and asked me out to dinner, which I immediately agreed to. I was shocked that he was interested in me, but I saw how much he respected me after our first date came to an end. We've gone on tons of dates since then and have been discussing getting an apartment together so that we would see more of each other. Our major can get pretty busy and there's very little time to go out or visit friends, family or significant others. Even when you have the time, you don't always feel like going out because of how draining all the work is. The second I am done with classes for the day, all I want to do is sleep for hours on end. All of that info is useful to know because my boyfriend Nathan and I make a pretty big deal about date nights since we don't get to have them very often. It takes a lot of planning for us to find common free days where we could go see a movie or have fancy dinner out at a restaurant. However, this specific incident I'm gonna be talking about one where we had planned to go out for Nathan's birthday and it happened to fall on a day where neither of us had to go to classes or work, so we made reservations at a local steakhouse. It was a restaurant we often went to because the food was delicious while still being reasonably priced and affordable for two broke college students. I had put on a nice white blouse and black pants along with some gold jewelry that made the entire outfit stand out more. Nathan wore the nicest thing he owned, which was a button-up shirt and a pair of tailored pants that he had worn at a wedding 2 years prior. We weren't exactly the fanciest couple, but we did our best to dress up more than we usually did. After all, we wore scrubs the vast majority of the day at school and work and then changed into sweats the moment we got home. Anyway, this was practically a red carpet look for us. We arrived in time for our reservation and there was a decent line waiting to be seated in the restaurant, so we were definitely glad that we had planned ahead so we wouldn't have to wait for ages. There was an older woman at the front of the line which was making a big fuss about the wait, saying that she didn't think she needed a reservation and demanded to be seated before everyone else. I could hear the woman behind the counter attempt to explain why she couldn't do that, but Nathan and I kept moving forward to our table. I didn't feel bad because we were smart enough to plan ahead and make a reservation, so anyone who didn't was left to deal with the consequences. We sat at a small table next to a young couple who were finishing up their meal. It was nice and we had a nice view of the street outside, so we could watch people come and go without being surrounded by others on all sides. We settled in and the waitress Natalie put in our drink orders before tending to other tables. We talked about our classes as we no longer shared a single class, so there was always something to discuss, whether it was the things we learned or other students that were getting on our nerves. It was a wonderful way to catch up and grow closer as a couple. I was just bringing up my plans for the upcoming holiday season so that we could discuss if we wanted to visit family together or go separately and celebrate together earlier on when a couple was seated at the table next to us. I was not staring or anything, but I noticed that the wife immediately began speaking to her husband in a hushed tone where the only words I could make out were lazy and youth. I glanced over for a second and realized it was the same woman who had been yelling at the staff earlier, which caused me to roll my eyes and return to my conversation. It might have been a bit mean to have that type of reaction to a stranger, but I didn't have any reason to believe that she had seen me, so I didn't think anything of it. Natalie came back and we gave her our dinner orders and she moved on to wait on the couple beside us. They seemed to be talking to her for a long time, so I paused what I was doing and attempted to listen in. The woman, who I will call Karen, was saying something about how unprofessional it was that people who work at this restaurant would take a break at one of the tables and take up a place that could be occupied by a customer. I looked around in an attempt to see who she was talking about, but I couldn't see anyone that seemed like they worked here. Natalie seemed equally confused and said as much, but I couldn't hear anything else that Karen was saying, so I turned back to Nathan and started telling him about a funny story my sister told me. It took about 30 or 40 minutes for our food to show up and we started eating. It was delicious and I was doing my best to savor every bite. Nathan tried a little bit of my meal and I had some of his, which is something we always do. Nathan scowled at something and I asked him what was wrong, so he told me that the woman next to us would not stop staring daggers at me. I purposefully avoided looking over at her and tried to continue enjoying my meal. Karen kept looking at me and clearing her throat, and when I looked over, she would gesture to herself and her menu, but I couldn't figure out what she wanted, so I went back to my meal. When Natalie dropped off their food, she kept her at the table to talk to her. Natalie: I'm sorry, is there something wrong? Karen: no, everything is not fine. Natalie: what's the problem? This lazy woman refuses to serve us. I looked over because I had a feeling that she was talking about me. Natalie: I'm not sure I understand. Karen: she's just been sitting there eating all night long instead of doing her job. She is lazy and I want to speak to her manager so she gets fired. Me: I'm sorry, what do you think? Do you think I work here? Of course you do, you're wearing the uniform. I looked at myself and then looked at Natalie and realized we were wearing very similar outfits. It was not enough to make someone think I worked there, at least in my opinion though. Me: I hate to break it to you, but I don't work here. I'm a vet student and I work at a local clinic a handful of evenings a week. Karen: I don't believe you. You're a liar on top of being lazy. I turned away after this and I could hear Natalie trying to stand up for me by backing up the fact that I was not an employee. I could tell that Nathan was getting close to stepping in because he hated seeing someone be so disrespectful and single-handedly ruin the good mood we were both in. I then went back to my food for a little while, but it became clear that the situation was only escalating further. I told Karen that I was not an employee of this restaurant and that she was more than welcome to get a manager, and asked them if she was so convinced that I was lying. I added that she needed to stop acting stupid and mind her own damn business. I saw her face turn red with anger and her husband reached over in an attempt to calm her down, but she just shrugged him off. I turned my back on her but froze when I saw a terrified look across my boyfriend's face. He jumped up and pulled me out of my seat and I spun around to see what was going on, only to be met with Karen lunging at me with a steak knife in her hand. I screamed and attempted to get away, but she managed to cut the side of my arm before another customer disarmed her and held her back. It was a shallow cut, but it stung. Nathan was all over me, checking to make sure I was okay and using a napkin to stop the bleeding. Natalie had called 911 with her cell phone and had hurried away to get a manager, so it didn't take long for someone to come over and check on us. The police arrived quickly and a paramedic took me aside to get a good look at my wound and administer first aid. It did not take long for the officers to figure out what had happened since there were so many witnesses, and they took Karen away in handcuffs and she got charged for assault with a deadly weapon. The restaurant gave us a handful of coupons for free meals that we plan on using the next time we have a free evening. My arm healed completely and Karen is still in custody, so she won't be bothering anyone for a while. Update to the story: some of you were asking what happened to this Karen spawned from hell. Well, I'm happy to tell you that she is now spending some much needed time behind bars and won't be bothering anyone for a long time. God bless. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I am very happy to hear that, because certainly this Karen does not belong in public, because she is not only a nuisance but actually dangerous. Honestly, people like this should not roam around in the streets. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.